Hi everybody, this is Trenton with the first episode of Understanding Chess with Trenton. The goal in this series here is to help people who understand how to play chess. They know the rules, but maybe don't understand some of the strategy involved, and I'm going to try to break it down for people who are just kind of beginners on why some moves are good and why they are played versus other moves. So I hope you enjoy it. Today we are going to look at a very famous game, often known as the Opera game. It's between the American chess champion Paul Morphy against two amateurs, played in the Paris Opera House in 1858. A little context behind this game is that Paul Morphy had just dominated the first American Chess Congress and was going on a tour of Europe to play all of the top European grandmasters at the age of 20 years old. The Duke of Brunswick had a private box in the Paris Opera House, and he was a chess fan, and he invited Morphy while he was on his tour to come and visit the opera. Morphy's mother was an opera singer, so he was extremely fond of the opera and was very eager to go. Unfortunately, when he got there, he found out that there had been a chess set up in the private box, and the Duke of Brunswick and his friend Count Isouard, who was a French aristocrat, asked him if they would play a chess game while the opera was going on. Now, Morphy was a bit irritated because he'd gone originally only to see the opera. He didn't expect to have to be playing chess while he was going, but he was a young man who didn't want to be impolite, so he ended up playing this chess game while trying to watch the opera at the same time. And it's kind of ironic because he didn't even want to play, and he was very distracted the whole time, and it ended up being one of the most famous and greatest chess games that had ever been played. So we'll dive right into it, and I hope you enjoy. The first move of the game here is Paul Morphy played his pawn to e4. Now, if you're not familiar with chess notation, you'll notice on the bottom here and on the sides of the boards, we've got some numbers and letters. And these are just to be able to record chess games and show what moves were played so that we can record things for history and people can analyze them later. So as you can see, pawn to e4 means it's on the e file. He moved it up to the number 4 space. Okay? So anytime you ever want to look over a chess game in the past, it's just really easy to see that. All you have to do is look at what the name of the piece was and where they moved it to. So that's how you're able to know what that is. So if you're ever curious, that's what all those numbers and letter means whenever people go over chess games. So e4, either e4 or d4 are the, by far, most common opening moves among chess masters. And the reason that they like to do this is because chess masters understand the importance of controlling the central squares. In this case, for instance, e4 now controls both f5, but more importantly, d5 right here. So anytime you can have control of the center, that's almost always good for you as a chess player because it prevents your opponent from being able to move there. For example, if black had some sort of piece and you would try to want to move it there, well, pawn can easily take it. Obviously you're essentially blocking your opponent from having a lot of scope for their pieces. They're going to have to be You're going to have to play from the sides, and you're going to, if you want to put your own pieces there, for example, something like this, it's going to be very hard to capture a piece there because you can obviously just capture right back with your pawn. So like I said, in master play, either e4 or d4 are by far the most popular moves. Paul Morphy's favorite move was e4. This is what he played. Now, black played a common response to e4, which is just to respond in kind. They played their pawn to e5, accomplishing the same sort of goals, only in this case they're taking control here. Obviously, as you probably know, pawns can't go directly forward, they can only attack diagonally. So black says, okay, well, you're going to control those. I'm going to turn around and control these center squares. Paul Morphy then did knight to f3. This is the most common follow-up. It does the same sort of goal. It helps take control and challenge for this square, and it also does an important thing for white as well. It helps what's called develop a piece. Now, obviously, all of your pieces are on the back rank here behind all your pawns, and because they can move a lot farther and do a lot more, they are the most important pieces for you, much more important than pawns for the most part. So it's very important at the start of the game, if you're hoping to win, is to get these off the back rank and out into the game. So that's what Knight 3 helps to do. Almost all chess masters nowadays are going to play this move as a follow-up if this is the sort of thing that happens. Now, Black responded by playing d6. This is called the Philidor Opening. It's named after a famous old chess player. I'm going to mispronounce this, but it's Francois André Danikin Philidor, who was a French chess master, I believe, in the 16 or 1700s. I think it was actually the 1700s. And he was kind of considered a great master of his days, maybe the strongest player of his day. Now, even though that's the case, this is still a solid opening, but it's not considered the best by today's standards. Now, what this is supposed to accomplish is all it does is it helps reinforce this pawn right here. That's just trying to say, okay, if you want to take this pawn, which is doing very important work, I'm just going to recapture with this guy right here, and then I'll still have it same way. So it's just supposed to be a reinforcing defense. It is solid, but it's considered slightly passive nowadays for Black. Also, it does nothing to try to help out the important d4 square, which is here outside of what's already been happening. It's just kind of helping that pawn out. So it's not bad, but it's not the greatest nowadays. So Paul Morphy, you have to remember, he's trying to watch the opera. He wants this game to be over as quick as he can. He's distracted. So he's trying to finish the game really quickly. He's not going to try to play some sort of passive line where they just play for 80 moves and go on forever and he just grinds out a win in the end. He wants to open this bad boy up. So what he does is he immediately challenges and plays his pawn up to d4. Now notice that he played knight f3 first because knight f3 helps support this square here because the knights can move into L. So if someone tries to take that pawn, he can recapture with the knight. So that was one of the other purposes of the knight to f3 move. So Paul Morphy does this because he's going to challenge right away. He wants to open the game up. He wants it to get over really early. He wants to have a lot of pieces go down right from the beginning, and then he doesn't have to worry about these guys trying to distract him from the opera that he really came to see the whole time. Black's response was to move the bishop to g4, this one right here. Now, what Black is trying to accomplish here is that they are trying to play a pin against White's queen. And what that is that now if the knight on here tries to move to help out with this pawn and recapture, so let's say like we just move this out of the way, now what happens? Now Black can just take the queen right here. Outside of the king, the queen is the most important piece. So they're trying to be clever here. They're trying to say, well, now your knight's stuck. You can't move your knight. And he's not going to help out because if you do that, you're going to lose your queen because the bishop's just going to come in. That was their idea. They thought it was a good idea, but it actually isn't that great of an idea. It has some good theory behind it, but Paul Morphy showed them right away why that's actually not as good of a move as they thought it was. He said he didn't care. He just went ahead and he did d takes e5. So took the e5 with his pawn. And so Black's like, okay, well, that's how we're going to play it. This is what we wanted to do anyway. They went ahead and just took that knight right there. Now, Paul Morphy responded the way he has to. He doesn't want to just lose a knight and have nothing go on and still have his queen attacked, so he has to take back with his queen. So he gets rid of that guy right there. Now, Black is already down. As you can see, that Black's down a pawn right now, so obviously you don't want to be down too much in what's called material. That's essentially just pieces for yourself, pieces and pawns. So he goes ahead and retakes right here. with d takes e5. Okay, but Paul Morphy's about to show why he didn't care if the knight was taken off the board and why he wanted to go ahead and take it. He plays bishop to c4. Okay, and if you can look closely, you can probably see what black's problem is now. Both white's queen and his bishop are pointing at this pawn right here on f7. So let's say black makes just like some other move that doesn't really matter or do anything right here. Plays the pawn up there. What's going to happen next? White's going to checkmate him, because he would then come in with his queen. He's got check on the king, and the king's got nowhere to go. He can't take back because the bishop protects the queen. He can't move anywhere around. There's no pieces that can get away. Guess what? The game's over and he's lost already. So black's got a problem. He's got to find some way to prevent this really super quick checkmate from happening already. Once again, this is kind of showing why moving that bishop over there, why they thought it was a good idea, was actually not that great of an idea. So what black decides to do, and by black I mean both the duke and the count, they said, well, we're going to move this knight over here, and we're going to put it on this f6 square here. And they thought that what this was going to do is block this queen from being able to come in. So obviously the bishop could still come in and take, but then now the king can just take back, and then this knight's blocking it, so he's not in check anymore. So it turns out that this is actually not the best way to do it either. This is not the best way to defend. The best way to defend, apparently, would have been moving, instead of moving the knight here, would have been moving the queen up here to d7, because now the queen can also come in and help defend right there. So why is that better than doing this? Well, Paul Morphy is about to show you on his very next move. He decides to move this queen over here to b3. So what does this do? Well, now you can see the pressure is still on this pawn right here. It's not quite set up for checkmate anymore, but we still have a bad situation where the bishop could come in and take this pawn. And now the king can't come back and just take back because the queen is right there looking at that pawn. And the king cannot purposely put himself into check, obviously. But now there's another threat associated with that as well. Now the queen is not only helping out this bishop, the queen is also able to come and snatch this guy right here on b7 if he wants to. I mean, if you take a look, you can see, the rook can't help take back, no pawns can help, the knight can't do anything, the queen's out of position to help that. So that pawn right there is defenseless. So what it looks like right now is that black is at the very least probably going to lose another pawn. Now, if you're playing against someone like Paul Morphy, even just being down one pawn to him is probably enough where you're going to lose the game if you don't do something really good. So black came up with pretty much the only defense they could. And this is actually a decent move by black right here. Black moved the queen up here to e7. Now, you might think to yourself, well, that doesn't, okay, maybe that helps out over here, but it doesn't really do much over here. Well, watch what would happen. So if the queen would happen to come in and try to take this pawn, right? We can't do anything. This queen can't directly defend, but what it can do is come over here to b4, and we have a check on the white king. And then the only thing that white would be able to do is take back with the queen, and the bishop would come over here with check again. And so now white would be in trouble. Okay? So you see, kind of tricky there by black. That's actually apparently the very best move that black could do in the position. So Paul Morphy, being a chess genius, saw that that could happen, and he wasn't about to let that happen. He's like, well, you know what, I don't really need that pawn right now. Anyway, I don't want to get in a bit of trouble. I'm already doing pretty well for myself. What he did instead was he continued developing more pieces. So he moved his knight out here to c3. Okay, so one of the basic tenets of chess is that, and it's always a good idea, is that instead of just trying to checkmate with one or two pieces right away, like I said, get your pieces off the back rank, have your whole army be able to come and help you out to win the game. Okay, this does another sort, obviously it's not really a threat anymore, but if it would happen in the future, now the knight is blocking it so that if it would try to come out here, it wouldn't be able to give check. So now that would be a bad move for black. Okay. So Paul Morphy says, I'm going to get more pieces out so that I can try to get this game over with. I can have overwhelming force against your guys. Black's only got he's only got 2 pieces developed right now. Morphy's got 3, so he's already leading right now. He's got more troops ready for the battle. Okay. So what's black going to do right here? Black then played c6 right there. Okay. So Paul Morphy then responded in kind. He says, well, I'm going to keep developing pieces, but I'm going to remember what you did from earlier, and I'm going to put a pin on you. He takes this bishop back here, and he moves up here to this g5 square. Now, remember earlier in the game, black tried to do a pin on the queen over here, and Paul Morphy showed why that didn't quite work. In this case, this pin does work, okay? Because now, if this knight moves away anywhere, then bishop is going to take the queen, and there's no real refutation for this, as opposed to earlier where Morphy was just happy to trade a bishop for a knight. Okay, now it's just a bad situation for him. So now this knight actually is stuck here, because if black loses his queen, he's going to lose the game, because there's just no way he's going to be able to recover from it. So black didn't try to do anything to counter this threat over here. Black tried to counterattack over here. Black moved this pawn up to b5. Now the idea behind this move is that he's going to try to kick away this bishop right here. That's what black thinks. And then now this pawn is supported by this pawn back here. So black thought, once again, he's like, I'm really clever. I'm going to get rid of this pesky bishop that's really annoying me. It's going to take away these threats so I don't have to worry about my king being in trouble over here and having all this taken away. So what's Paul Morphy going to do here? Now, it's important to remember, Paul Morphy's trying to watch an opera while this game's going on. He's distracted. His back is to the stage, and in between moves, he's turning around so that he can see what's going on. And he's trying to be polite and grateful that this count came and helped him. The count and the duke allowed him to come to the opera and sit in the press box. But at the same time, he's already thinking, how do I get this game over with as quick as I possibly can? What's he going to do? Well, even though he's already leading, he goes ahead and plays this move right here. Knight takes b5. Now, isn't that running into some problems here? Isn't the pawn just going to be able to take back? All of a sudden you took a pawn, but you lost a knight. Isn't that bad for you? Well, not exactly, and here's why. Here's why Paul Morphy was such a brilliant chess player. Black says, okay, well, thanks for the gift. He takes back right away with c takes b5. But then look what white does. Now when he takes back with his bishop right here, bishop takes b5, guess what? That's check. So now the king either has to move or something else has to get in the way to block it. Okay? So all of a sudden I think black kind of realized what kind of trouble they were in. So what do they have to do? Well, they don't really want to move their king, because all they would be able to do is move it over in this area. And now look at white's got a queen over here, they've got bishop over here, probably going to get checkmated pretty quickly if they did that. So black moves this knight on b8 over to d7. Now obviously this is probably the best that he could do at the time. However, he has created another pin for himself, because now this knight is pinned to the king here. This knight can't move anywhere. So although it did help accomplish that, it's stuck too, along with this knight right here. So all of white's pieces right now are helping out and attacking. All of black's pieces are defending. So Morphy is winning this game by a lot. Okay. So now white came up with a really smart move to help continue the attack. Remember, he's trying to get this game over with as quick as he can. So white goes ahead and plays castle to the queen's side. If you're watching this, hopefully you're familiar with the idea of the castle move. But it is a special move that you can do once in the game, if you don't know, where if there are no pieces in between a king and a rook, and neither your king or rook have moved, either side, then you can actually move the king 2 spaces over, and then move the rook on the other side. Okay? It's a special move that you can do. So that would be castling to the king's side, but what Morphy did is he castled to the queen's side. He could do it either way. He chose to go this way, so he moves his king 2 spaces over, and the rook comes out to the other side. So now, Morphy's king is in a safe position, but more importantly for him, these rooks are now coming into the game. Okay, this rook right here in particular is going to help out in the attack right away, but now this rook is connected to this rook, where if someone tried to come and take this rook, this guy would be able to defend. The king's no longer in the way over here on the e-square. Okay, so even though it's usually a good idea to do that just to help get your king to safety in the corner away from the center of the board, like black's is right now, he was mostly doing it to try to get this rook to help out in the attack, because now this rook is looking right down at this knight along with the bishop. So this knight is in a world of hurt right now. Okay. So what's black going to do here? Black has to try to help defend this knight right here, because otherwise it's just going to get taken, and then black's going to just lose right away. So black tries to help defend it. He moves his rook over here to d8. He really didn't have any other options at this point. He has to do something. But white doesn't really care. White says, remember, he's trying to get the game over with quickly. He goes ahead and he takes this rook, and he takes up here on d7. Okay? So even though it's not a check, he's still attacking this rook, he's attacking this queen. Black has to get this rook out of the way. So that's why he moved it over there, so he could help defend. He takes back on d7. Okay? But remember how this rook over here was helping out? Now this guy can come in. Paul Morphy plays rook to d1. So check out the situation right now. Even though white has lost a rook and 2 knights, as opposed to a bishop and a knight, an extra pawn here for black, I mean, white is winning so bad, it's not even funny. It's all of black pieces are defending or in trouble pretty much, and all of white pieces are coming and they're bearing down on this king right here. Okay? All right, so what is black going to do right here? He can't really do too much. So what black tries to do is he plays queen to e6. All he's really trying to do right here, and I say he, obviously it's the two of them combined, the duke and the count. He's trying to do 2 things here. He's trying to unpin this knight, so now this knight can move and not have to be defending the queen the whole time. But this way the queen still tries to help defend the rook, so that bishop just can't come in and take the rook right here. Okay? So what does white do right here? Once again, Paul Morphy says, I don't care what you tried to do with that move. I'm going to do what my plan was anyway. He plays bishop takes d7. He goes ahead and takes this rook anyway. Okay? So now, obviously, that's check. Bishop's checking. So he's either got to move the king or he's got to take back. Moving the king would be kind of silly here. He can't move the king here because the queen, or I'm sorry, the queen wouldn't be going directly into it, but he would in a second here. So he just moves the queen up. If he moves the king back here, all he's got to do is move the bishop and he's checked again. So obviously the best way to get out of check here, now that the knight is not pinned, is he takes back. With the knight, so knight takes d7. Okay? So, what exactly can white do now? You know, it looks like maybe the attack is petered out. He's only got a few pieces left. We got a lot of pieces exchanged on the board. You know, he's got a queen, he's got a rook, he's got a bishop. You know, how can he get this game over with and win right away? Well, he played one of the most famous moves in chess history. Queen to b8 check. Now, at first, if you have never seen this game before, that looks like it should be a losing move, because the knight right here is defending that square, right? Looks like the knight can just take the queen, and then black should be able to win, right? Well, that's what black did. Black says, okay, let's see what you got. Knight takes b8, but look what happens now. Rook to d8, and guess what? That's checkmate. Rook is attacking the king. King can't move up here because of this bishop right here. Same reason he can't take back, because of the bishop. Can't move over here because he's still in check. And there's nothing that can take the rook. It's checkmate. Game's over in 18 moves. Paul Morphy gets to go back, and he gets to watch the opera again. So why did he even play queen to b8 in the first place? So let's see what we got here. So why did he even go back there and do that? His whole idea was that he saw that he could checkmate if the rook was on that square down there, because there's nothing else defending it. The only problem is that this knight is in the way. So he gave up his queen, because there's no other thing that black can do right here. Knight, it has to take with the knight. So the whole point of giving up his queen was to get that knight out of the way so that this rook could come down and play checkmate. So it's a pretty amazing game. So one of the reasons that this game is so famous is that obviously it's short, but it's also very instructive. It shows why it's a really good idea to develop all of your pieces as quick as you can. It's also cool to note that on pretty much every single move that was played in the game, Morphy played the very best move. He did everything exactly as a computer nowadays would say you're supposed to do. You know, it looks kind of cool because he made a couple sacrifices of his pieces, but they were all justified. They all were at the exact right thing to do at the moment. Meanwhile, black tries to do a couple things, but you could see right away why they weren't the greatest things to do.